those beautiful clouds?
Those aren't clouds, Daddy. Those are chemtrails.
Chemtrails? What are chemtrails?
Chemical trails, Daddy, and they're very bad.
I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you cry. I just wanna see you smile. Baby, I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you die. I just wanna see you smile. Baby, melody in the sky, me can't see clear. Blue skies are gold and white. Lines appear, them say it's natural. Me not believe them. Them say it's vital, and I listen to them. Something strange is going on. Feel it in my heart, sensing something strong. Gotta save the future, put the rumors to rest. Gotta help the children and give it a best can. Send around and be blind to the fast can. Taking no more, how can they relax that? I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you cry. I just wanna see you smile. Baby, I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you die. I just wanna see you smile. Baby, living on earth, we must respect the earth. Human and animal, we all deserve the right to peace and opportunity. Nowadays we are blind, we can't.
This is Russ Tanner from GeoEngineering Watch Radio. We're here with Greg Palin, and Dane will be joining us shortly. Greg, how you been doing, and how's this week been going for you?
Oh, good, Russ. Glad to be with you again. Looking forward to being with Dane here in a few minutes. Been going well. Continue another week in the asylum, like Dane often says. I wrote a essay that this week out of frustration that Dane and I have been talking about, and I think he's going to publish it on geoengineeringwatch.org, and we're doing a few final touch-ups on it. But maybe we can talk about that topic between now and the time Dane gets on, if you're interested in Rush, just the idea of how do we get people to wake up and acknowledge geoengineering and all the other issues whereby we're being, it appears to be depopulated, soft kill, slow kill, definitely sickened, obviously. And I know that you've personally been affected by that effect, and many other Americans, their health is being affected dramatically.
Yeah, for me, it's quite a big deal. I mean, as I talk about, sometimes I do smell and taste this. I was on a radio show like late night in the Midlands last night for about 2.5 hours, and the radio host also smells them. It's real strong for him as well. So a lot of people have contacted me who suffer, causes inflammation, a lot of health symptoms. This is what I put up with every single day. The air is never clear anymore, and I've driven from Maine to Florida several times now on family trips here over the last several years, and there's no place that's clear. It never goes completely clear. So it's quite this is huge, absolutely huge.
I went on your website a couple of weeks ago, Russ, and read your story, and it's really compelling, and I think it's so important for Americans to acknowledge. I think we all see it in our own families where it's really easy to overlook the problems that others are having if we're not having those exact same problems. But we obviously need to be concerned about what's happening, the health effects of others, because surely it's going to affect us the same way. And if we have any compassion at all for our fellow man, we need to listen to these stories and act on them. And in some of Well, you've been battling this battle for, gosh, it sounds like 10 or 20 years, most of your life, it sounds like.
Well, yeah, originally my battle was with amalgam fillings. If it's not one thing, it's another. I had 4.5 good years in my life. The rest of my life was spent battling illnesses originally from amalgam fillings, and probably vaccines contributed as well. 4.5 years I had after my fillings were removed were wonderful, from 2000 to 2005. And that's the year I first started experiencing daily spraying in Jamestown, New York. And I smelled it the very first day, had terrible headaches, terrible joint pain, had 4 other people in the house with me. I had 3 employees and my business partner. And one of them could smell it a little bit or taste it a little bit. The other one couldn't at all. And the other one had some symptoms but couldn't smell or taste anything, but had like headaches and stuff. Everybody is affected one way or another, even if you don't smell or taste it. I mean, you still are breathing the stuff in and being contaminated by it. I think let me try Dane real quick, see if I can get him on here real quick. And he's doing a shoot, I believe, right now, but he was supposed to be done about 5 or 10 after. So let me see if I can catch him.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But, yeah, in the meantime...
Yeah, I'm glad that you did publish all that, Russ, because people do need to read that.
Hey, Dane, we're live. How you doing, Dane?
Good, guys. Thanks. Sorry about the little delay. We were just finishing up with some of the filming at the Alzheimer's Association event today. Also filming some UV damage and some of the trees throughout the city that was once known for its trees. So. Did you guys, I'm sure you introed and everything already. If I can have a minute, guys, I'll fill everybody in on what happened at our event today, if that's okay.
Absolutely. The floor is yours.
Okay. We have, this is, again, Dane. I'm at an Alzheimer's Association event in Northern California. But as I think I stated last week on the show, that the Alzheimer's Association denied my attempt to sponsor their event for $500 and have a booth like anybody else that can sponsor. And there's no particular designation of any type of business anybody can sponsor. But in my case, that was not allowed. And they sent back a very pointed email message that said, "We're sorry. We don't think you're appropriate for our event. The Alzheimer's Association does not recognize any connection between aluminum and Alzheimer's." And I find that astounding when we have peer-reviewed study that makes that connection. In fact, the common person generally knows that there is a connection between aluminum and Alzheimer's. It's widely understood. There's enough peer-reviewed study for enough decades now on that issue. So they declined my attempt to sponsor. They made it clear why. And now we're finding some data that indicates, no surprise, that the aluminum industry also sponsors the Alzheimer's Association. So why would we be surprised that the message is controlled? So we printed special flyers, 1,000 of them, that show what I posted this week. I posted the message I got from the Alzheimer's Association representatives, the exact email that stated they didn't want me or this message at their event. We made flyers with that letter, and also flyers that showed some of the peer-reviewed science study that connects aluminum and Alzheimer's. And with about a dozen activists, we passed out flyers at this event. Now, it's interesting, 2 days ago, the representative from the Alzheimer's Association called us and asked us to take her name off anything we published because she said she was being threatened. Now, I took an immediate step of removing her email from our flyer because obviously we don't want people threatened. That's not how we win people over to this cause. We don't want that. That's not the appropriate step under any circumstances. But when I challenged her, asked her to please show me the threats that she said she got, she couldn't respond. She had none. But she simply got some calls from people who were questioning why their foundation was not allowing our sponsorship and why their foundation was denying the aluminum Alzheimer's connection. So she was never threatened, never. In fact, when I showed up at the event this morning, somebody spotted me there. Immediately, security came over and said, "I have to ask you to leave because the organizers of the event say they'll have you arrested if you don't." And I said, tell them to go ahead. I'm not doing anything wrong. What can they arrest you for? We're not being belligerent, and we're not doing anything but passing out information the public has a right to know. So the security guard walked away and came back after a few minutes and said, they said it's okay. Well, it's because they can't say otherwise. They can't arrest you for passing out information that the public has a right to know. So we continued on. We were very cordial, of course, with anybody who declined the information, and there are plenty like that. There's plenty of people in our society that don't want to know. And that's how we can end up with such blaring hypocrisies like the quote-unquote Alzheimer's Association. You hear their speaker up there talking about how terrible Alzheimer's is, and we have to find out what's causing it, and all this nonsense when they're turning two blind eyes to the largest mathematical cause of all, indisputably the largest cause, because that's one of their sponsors. So that's how completely upside down our societal system is, that we have these organizations that pretend to be for the common good and are simply there to control the message, because that's what the Alzheimer's Association is doing. They're controlling the message. Because, again, not only did they make it clear that they didn't want anybody talking about a connection between aluminum and Alzheimer's, they made it clear on a phone conversation. They sure didn't want anybody talking about the fact that there's a massive level of this contamination everywhere, and it appears to be related to climate engineering. So, anyway, that event went well, and I think we've started a lot of spot fires with people there. And in general, what people don't want to accept is we've had the Thelma and Louise moment. Society's had the Thelma and Louise moment. Modern civilization has leapt off the 100-story building already. You can't turn around in that equation. Just like for those that saw the movie Thelma and Louise, where they drove their car off the guardrail or over the cliff, once you've gone over the edge, there's no turning around, and that's human society is in that state. There's no going back to what we had. But we may be able to soften the impact and salvage something if we wake everybody up. So anyway, guys, that's basically the event this morning. There was probably 1,000 people there. I think we reached a lot of them anyway. And we have an event coming up in Reading on November 21st, Friday night, November 21st. We'll have experts there. Alan Buckman, from 38-year veteran from California Department of Fish and Game, former military meteorologist. Francis Mangos, former U.S. Forest Service biologist, will be there. We have a local physician that's done a lot of human testing of these contaminants and shown very, very alarming quantities of these metals in every single test subject. We'll have a county supervisor there. We're going to have a quite large event, I believe, and so that'll be our next format to try to air this out. But anyway, how does that seem to you, Greg, to have an Alzheimer's Association and Russ that won't allow anybody or tries to censor anybody from talking about aluminum and Alzheimer's connection? How does that strike you?
It strikes me as par for the course, Dane. When I first started studying all these different issues, it actually involved what led me, and I don't think you and I have ever talked about this, but what led me to studying the fluoride and the geoengineering and all these other issues was the silver issue, silver and gold, and how the CFTC manipulates these issues, and how the head of the CFTC is the keynote speaker at the Silver Users Association. That's very common. And bottom line being that it's classic fascism, whereby government and business are joined at the hip. I mean, the CFTC is supposed to be regulating the silver users, and the chairman of the CFTC is the keynote speaker at the Silver Users Association. Bottom line is, I see this in just about, whether it be the FDA, CDC, USDA, you've got conflict of interest across all these governmental entities.
Every single one. This is where people have been so incredibly conditioned into thinking what they want to think, that somebody somewhere is keeping an eye on things. Somebody would tell us if there was something wrong. And that is absolutely the most naive and incorrect notion that people could have. I mean, the foxes are running the hen house in every single case. across the board. I just got communication from a biologist that tests water in the Sacramento River downstream from Redding. For those that don't know, Redding is the northernmost city in California. The water for Southern California passes through Redding. And so it's very important what's in this water. We've known about the aluminum and tried to bring this to light in the waters in Redding, California, in the Sacramento River. But now I just heard from a biologist in the Sacramento area coming up with the same tests, and that has now discovered that when these metals really started to spike in 2011, suddenly across the board, they stopped testing for all these metals. They simply stopped. And so that's what we see. If just like the radiation from Fukushima, when it starts to go through the roof, you just up the safe level 10,000%. It's just let's alter the facts to fit the reality. And this is why we're headlong off the cliff right now.
Yeah, I just want to.
Dane, how many activists did you have at the Alzheimer's event there?
Probably 14 or 15, Craig.
That's
and
really good.
Enough.
That's really good. That's impressive.
We filmed that as well. We filmed everything. Russ, I'm sorry, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you had mentioned that Alcoa was sponsoring this convention. Is that correct?
No, not Alcoa. The aluminum industry. We don't know specifically it was Alcoa, but you have a lot of players in the aluminum industry. You have Rusal. There's other players, but there is some kind of data.
Major player, though.
Alcoa is. Rusal is even bigger, Greg. Rusal is the biggest on the planet. But we're still going through that data. We want to find more, but it appears that the aluminum industry is definitely a sponsor to some of these organizations, including the Alzheimer's Association. So we're still pulling up that data and sorting through it right now. Russ, let's open up the phone lines early today so that if anybody has a question, just try to give us something we can answer, and we'll move on to the next one. But if you can open up the phone lines, Russ, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. If anybody wants to call in, the number is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Dane, I was just wondering, is there any justification for the aluminum, the Aluminum Manufacturers Association? Is that what it's called, or what are they called?
The aluminum industry involves a lot of different people, so it's not the articles that we're finding so far refer to the aluminum industry as being contributors, and I have to get to the rest of that data. But again, the data does seem to be there, and why would we doubt this? Why would we doubt that the tobacco industry tries to control what the cancer organizations state? If we go back to some of the historical data on this, it's always the case, always, that you have given industries trying to control the message as to what those industries may harm, and we would be fools to think otherwise.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what their alleged connection is. I mean, if they just say, "Oh, we're just good guys, that's why we donate money to this cause." I wonder what. I guess that's probably what we'll find out is their justification for sponsoring such an event.
Well, I don't think you'd ever see them state a reason why. I mean, the fact that they give X amount of money, and I think we can find this in a lot of different arenas. I mean, we know these metal contaminants, endocrine disruptors. It's affecting fertility. Now we all have weakened immune systems. Now this whole Ebola situation is truly becoming a circus. I mean, and whatever people's theories as to what cards are being played, there's no question there's some kind of orchestration going on. I mean, I think anybody can see that at this point when they're telling. You guys probably saw last week that one nurse from Texas was sick with a fever after treating the Ebola patients, and then was told by the CDC that she could get on a commercial plane. Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
Told by the CDC what, Dane?
There was a nurse, one of the nurses that treated the Ebola victim in Texas that died now.
Right.
Was sick with a fever, and she called and asked the CDC if she could get on a commercial plane and fly, and they said, sure, no problem. And so now they're quarantining all those people. And a third nurse now is being quarantined in Belize that they just let go like nothing was wrong. So, again, obviously they're not really trying to contain this, and whatever cards are being played, and the fact that Ebola is probably an engineered pathogen. And the bottom line is the walls are closing in from so many different directions that the power structure can't maintain the facade much longer, and I think we should expect them to start playing a lot of different cards. I mean, there's simply, they don't have any options left at this point, and it'll be interesting to see how far Ebola goes. And if we could quantify how many people has climate engineering killed already, and we know we have statistics like respiratory mortality in the continental U.S. going from 8th on the list of mortality to 3rd, and now indications are that it's in 2nd, and CDC is not disclosing that. So when World Health Organization is not disclosing that, how many individuals have been killed as a direct result of climate engineering? How could we even quantify that? It's astounding. The overall across the board effects from what we've been exposed to from climate engineering is profound beyond any really means of quantifying. Hey, let's go ahead and open up those phone lines if you would.
Absolutely. The phone lines are open for anyone who wants to call in. We do have some callers waiting already, so if anyone else wants to call in, we do have room for you at 718-717-8296. And I would just comment, Dane, that it is so obvious when you see the CDC making these kinds of decisions that this is intentional. There's no way that you can be that incompetent. I mean, would you not agree? That's not incompetence. This is intentional.
I would agree, so they always find somebody to scapegoat. But again, the bottom line is when the facade can't be maintained anymore and people have to wake up to the fact that this reality we've known is never sustainable. It's ending by the day. And I know that's a hard notion to accept for a lot of people that want to keep driving the brand new cars every year and want to keep burning up the resources and paving the planet. But quite simply, isn't it better to have a more simple scenario where life can continue than to completely burn up the planet with this sort of activity in an extremely short time and then nobody lives, nobody continues? I don't think that's a very reasonable scenario. So people are going to have to wake up to reality, but the power structure right now is more dangerous than ever. They're more dangerous than ever because the curtain is starting to be pulled back. They can't maintain the facade, and right now the Ebola appears to be a card that they're playing, and will probably continue to. Russ, go ahead and take the caller.
Okay, yeah. I mean, in the world of depopulation, we all have to remember that we are the population. We are the population. Caller with your phone number that ends in 62. How are you doing? Who are we speaking with?
Hey guys, it's Ty from East Texas. I just want to make a comment quickly on the Ebola issue. Here in Northeast Texas, it's in full swing. One of our neighboring schools, Roy City, has shut the school down because of the Ebola. I guess somebody was linked to one of the nurses that was on the plane. It's just absolute madness. When the guy first landed over here in DFW from Africa, the main surgeon in Dallas, they had a meeting and it was televised, and half of the questions and answers were muted. So, yeah, the Ebola madness is just really crazy around here. I want to make a quick comment. On Wednesday, we had these webs falling out of the sky, some of them 50-foot long, a couple were about 100-foot long. Never seen anything like it. I've kind of seen the Kim webs on YouTube, but I looked it up on the internet, and it said that they're from these spiders that spray these webs. But I mean, it was nonstop for hours, and they're falling from the sky. What you guys take on this? I've tested that type of filament here. It looks the same, and these, the landscape is blanketed with them occasionally in certain places. Unless spiders are making their webs out of aluminum and barium, those aren't spider webs, because that was the primary element in the samples that we tested, aluminum and barium. So what it appears to be is that some of the patents, like the Welsbach patents, call for a blending of polymer fibers with aluminum oxide as these materials exit the spray mechanisms in the aircraft. And it appears that sometimes there's mechanism malfunctions that cause this type of webbing. That's what it appears. But the samples we tested were primarily aluminum and barium, not spider webs, no question. So, just to actually see it and witness it and see that many, I mean, this was going on for hours, and it wasn't only in the area where we were working at. Come to find out it was all over Dallas. And, I mean, this stuff was falling, out of high in the sky over and over and over. I mean, photograph it, record it, and post it, Ty. I mean, the situation is the biosphere situation is spinning out of control rapidly. Right now in Northern California, again, we're only 2 months away from the winter solstice. The sun is quite low in the horizon, and the intensity of the sun is still such that you can't really stand out in it very long. And again, the trees are dying. That's what we just filmed this morning. A lot of the burnt trees, burnt bark. I took some UV readings this morning on film. Again, we're showing 60% UVB. So they're desperate. The climate engineers, God knows what they're going to try. We're showing the long-term NOAA maps, some very, very profound heating of the entire country in the next month. Excuse me, the next 10 to 14 days. So some background noise there. So the bottom line is that whatever control the climate engineers thought they had, I'm sure that they have a few engineered cool downs coming. But across the board, we're looking at temperatures in the next 8 to 14 days in areas like Wyoming and Montana up in the 80-degree range. And that's astoundingly high. So who knows what the climate engineers are willing to try at this point. But thanks for bringing that to our attention, Ty. And photograph that and post it. Russ, if we can grab somebody else, let's try to keep going through the list.
Absolutely. Ty, thanks for calling. Appreciate your call as always. Caller with your phone number that ends in 32. Who are we speaking with?
Is that me?
Yep, that's you. How you doing?
Who's that, Ross Turner?
What's that?
I couldn't quite get that.
Who's speaking? Is that Ross Turner?
Yep, this is Russ Tanner.
I'm not getting it. Ross, can I just ask you, how you taste these chemtrails? How you smell them and taste them?
Russ, I can't understand anything. We're going to have to switch callers.
Okay.
Oh, is it like that then?
I'm sorry.
I can't understand.
Cut me off.
Why can you not understand me?
Why can you not understand me?
Russ, sorry, caller, we just can't understand the audio.
Yep,
let's switch to another one.
Yeah, try to call back, caller. Thanks for calling. Okay, yeah, we're ready to take anybody who wants to call in. We do have some open slots here at 718-717-8296. You know, Dane, I've seen video after video of these spider webs. Sometimes they cover fields so thick it looks like there's a layer of snow on the ground. I've seen videos of this.
It does, and if you see, there's some also good video out there of when you see snow melting on grass, there's a webbing that's below it. And again, we can speculate as to what caused that. But in the last 2 years here in Northern California, we've gone from 80 degrees to snow in a day, and that snow will then sit there even after the storm passes and we're back up in the 70s. It'll sit there and basically it'll sublimate right back into the air without any water even ponding below it. And I think we're going to see more of that this winter for whatever areas they're able to continue to ice nucleate. I saw some on the radar this morning up in Canada above the Great Lakes. They were ice nucleating some clouds there. You can see it very easily on the radar because you'll see a band of rain that suddenly just flashes out to frozen precipitation. Without going over mountains, there's no orographic enhancement, which is going over topography. So it's pretty easy to spot on the radar as we get in the winter for people that watch these rain bands just flash out to frozen. That's from ice nucleating material being saturated into that storm. So it's something people should keep an eye on. But right now, the NOAA maps for the next 2 weeks look pretty alarming. It shows astoundingly warm temperatures across about 2/3 of the country in the next 2 weeks. We'll see how that plays out.
Absolutely. That's going to be interesting. Caller, with your number that ends in 92, who are we speaking with?
No, there's nothing coming through there.
Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you got the live phone call with Dane and Russ going on?
Yeah, this is the one. I'm looking for the caller. Let's take the caller that ends in 32. Caller, what's your name?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
What's your question, Rick?
Can you hear me?
I can't understand you.
Can you hear me?
Russ, we better just disconnect. I can't.
Yeah.
Do you understand what he says?
No, I can't tell. He's just repeating himself. I don't know what he's saying.
Okay, yeah. Let's keep that call screened out.
Yeah, caller that ends in 92. Who are we speaking with?
Hello.
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 Hi, Dane and Russ. How are you guys doing? It's Elizabeth.
Hi, Elizabeth. How are you?
Hey, Liz.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hey, Greg. Is that you?
Yeah, how you doing?
All right. How are you doing?
Good.
Good. I wanted to call in and let you guys know. I know Russ always tells everybody because he's so right on with this. Yesterday, there had been sprayings going on like Thursday night, all Friday morning, and yesterday morning walked outside and there was such a nasty chemical odor. It almost smelled like acetone, and it was so strong, and I've never smelled anything so bad as yesterday. It was unbelievable. My child never says anything, and the first words out of his mouth was, "Mom, what is that nasty smell outside?" And all the kids at the bus stop were saying the same thing, and they don't usually talk about things like that. So I found it was so severe. I called up our Department of Environmental Protection, and I reported it. And I got a case number, and basically they took all my information down. And about 2 hours later, I had the Department of Environmental at my door, banging on my door, and I told the gentleman that the smell was very bad. I actually had a discussion with him for a good 45 minutes. I handed him some materials, Dane's flyer, and I basically told him that, we have been experiencing. And he was very open and listened to what I had to say. And he took the flyer and he said he's going to look into it and research it more. So regardless of whether or not he just said it or he meant it, he went away with some credible information.
That's awesome, Liz. I am so glad to hear this, and I'm glad when people bring up this. I was on a radio talk show last night, and the host could actually, he brought it up. I never brought it up. He said, I taste the taste of copper in the air all the time. When they're spraying us, I taste copper. I actually have written an article where I talk about these tastes, and one of them I call the metallic copper, which has a real copper taste. I'm glad you brought up the acetone. That's one of the more common types. I hear reports of that from all over, and that's something that I'm very sensitive to. So I'm glad you brought that up, Liz. That's a lot of people are reporting that.
It's that kind of starting spot fires like that, Liz, are so important. I mean, if you don't know how far that will go when you actually pass data on to somebody like that. This morning at the Alzheimer's event, there were people there from Caltrans, that's the big highway organization in California, and they wanted a stack of flyers and DVDs because they were aware of the issue, but they didn't have anything to pass out. So, this kind of spot fire starting with awareness is important. So thanks for taking the time to do that and try to get somebody out and report it.
Yes, it's very important, and we keep track of the case numbers as well. But I did talk to him. He knows we have asthma in our family, and he knew it was very important. Bottom line is, again, people are not aware of it. He really did not know about it. I can honestly tell you that part he did not know, and he was willing to read it and look it up. That's what matters. I didn't go on and on. I didn't start yelling. I wasn't mad. We had a nice conversation. It was a decent, literal conversation, back and forth, and, it was important.
You guys have enough, you guys are all three in different locations. I have a question. I mean, right now, given, it's getting late in the year, how hot does the sun feel for each of you where you're at? Can you, for example, if you're standing out in the sun today, can you put your hand on top of your car and leave it there? Or is it too hot? Because here in California right now, even if you put your hand on any surface that's outside that's not perhaps a white surface, it's far too hot to leave your hand there. The intensity of the UV is so immense that any surface is just too hot to actually touch even now. Did you guys experience any of that where you're at?
Dane, I was building decks last summer, and in regard to how it feels on your skin.
I mean right now, right now, this late in the year. I know in the summertime in a lot of places, I mean right now. Right now.
Yeah, but this is again in late, fall, when the sun shouldn't have been as intense, and literally weeks after that sun exposure. And again, I like to be tough and not really talk about problems, but I'll tell you what, my elbows that were exposed to that sun, I mean, for months, I'd have pain in the skin on those elbows because I got so much sun. I don't ever remember feeling that type of a reaction to the sun.
Well, you know, the NOAA maps that I'm seeing right now, and anybody can look up these maps if you just, you know, Google NOAA forecast maps if you find the right sites. But the amount of warm areas they're showing for the next 10 to 14 days is higher than anything I've ever seen by far. And again, if things are spiraling out of control to the point that I think they are, we're going to see some pretty profound things pretty soon. And, of course, we have other areas where we have deluges. We have the cyclones that are spinning up. Bermuda just got hit. Another one just skirted Hawaii. But we have ocean temperatures that are off the charts. We had ocean temperatures off the western coast of Mexico in May of this year that were 90 degrees. I mean, these are astoundingly hot temperatures, especially for that time of year. And as that heat builds up, and when the UV is intense as it is, that causes a massive thermal energy buildup in the oceans, and anything that is exposed to that radiation starts to build up heat fast, and we're seeing it. So everybody should really keep an eye on the horizon, keep your cupboard full, and be ready for whatever card the power structure plays, because I would argue they're more dangerous now than ever.
Thank you, Liz, for your work. I really appreciate what you do, Liz. Greg, were you going to say something? Go ahead.
Thanks, Liz.
Yeah, one point I was going to make in regard to this Ebola and why we do need to get this geoengineering stopped. The aerosolization that Dr. Rima talked about in tandem with the fact that there's a book called Germs that I read probably 10 years ago that talked about all these engineered viruses that were being made at Fort Detrick during the Cold War in Maryland, super anthrax, super Ebola, super pneumonia, things that no vaccine would touch, and yet they're pushing these vaccines. Number one, there was a NOVA program out that somebody sent me a link to, and I watched it, and it was amazing how they're pushing this ZMax vaccine for Ebola, almost like a sales pitch for Ebola, very similar to all the Kroger billboards around Atlanta here pushing for the flu vaccine, but very sickening, and I just wanted to remind the listeners, wherever this ends up going, beyond the listeners that are listening right now, a lot of these viruses were engineered in Maryland at Fort Detrick. So the idea that Nova was pushing about that this came from a fruit bat, don't rule out the fact that these viruses are engineered, and they could be used if aerosolized. Surely in this geoengineering operation could be used to help spread these viruses. So it's scary times.
They come up with different excuses all the time for the origin of Ebola, Greg. The first book I read on Ebola about 32 years ago, called The Hot Zone, at that point they speculated Ebola was somehow contracted in Chicken Cave in Africa by an explorer that went into that cave that somehow contacted something that was back there. I mean, they're simply grabbing at straws, throwing whatever excuse they can out to cover their tracks up. So they've changed their story on that quite a bit, is all I'm saying. And again, right now, the climate situation, the global pelagic fish population, the food fish is crashing. Harvests in many areas are crashing. You can't hide this very long, so we would expect the power structure to play these cards. Liz, are you still with us? Elizabeth?
I'm still here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So did you hear this morning, did you hear a part of what we tried to do at the Alzheimer's Association this morning? You probably caught that.
No, I didn't, because this morning we were out all morning. I'm sorry.
Okay, on the start of the broadcast, I thought you might have heard, but again, it was, to me, the epitome of hypocrisy to hear the speaker for the Alzheimer's Foundation up there trying to appeal to the sympathy of everybody that was there and how their organization is trying to stop the spread of Alzheimer's, talking about all the pain it causes and how hard they're trying to, engage in research, and at the same time suppressing anybody talking about the aluminum Alzheimer's connection. So, I mean, if you didn't hear that, a lot of hypocrisy, but we reached a lot of people there this morning, and again, with the autism, that the figure that we got from MIT that we talked about in the show before, that 1 in 2 children on the current trajectory, 1 in 2 children will have autism within 10 years. What does it take to wake people up? I don't know.
Yeah, Liz.
And I think it takes large groups like what you're doing there, Dane, and hopefully we could get that going on a nationwide basis in terms of networking with activists to hit those kind of events.
Groups like that need to be exposed. Same with the autism groups. Same thing. They're not acknowledging these sources, so they need to be exposed, and they don't like it. Again, as I said this morning, they don't like being exposed. The people that work there obviously don't like the spotlight shining on them. But you know what? If you don't like it, you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. You shouldn't be helping to spread disinformation, helping to deceive people, helping to basically hide the crimes of the power structure. If that's not what you think you should be doing, then don't do it. If you're not willing to take the heat for doing that, then don't do it. So these people need to be exposed. It's not okay to have a job like that just because it gives a paycheck. It's not okay to deceive the public just because it pays a paycheck. So,
and Dane, I just wanted to say, you probably remember this, but Congressman Chris Smith is very big on autism and trying to come up with, funding and cures and all kinds of things. So he's very involved. And we tried to meet with him and had sent letters and emails, and we got very close to setting up the time. And then last minute, his aide wrote back and said, "I'm sorry, but you're not in his district." And I said, wait a minute. I literally live in the same state. I am literally 25 miles from his office, if that. And what's the problem? How does that make a difference? Because he had met with the parent advocates of autism and the autistic children, and none of them were in his district. And I came back and said, none of them were in his district. What's the problem with this? Because we were trying to show him the numbers and how much it's affected, so many millions. And New Jersey has the highest autism rate, the highest. So
it's good to corner these guys, Elizabeth. And the bigger issue is, and it's good that we're getting the geoengineering issue out and exposed with these groups. The bigger issue is this: on the current trajectory, we won't have to worry about autism in 10 years or Alzheimer's, because the damage to the planet will be so horrific that the planet is rapidly descending into a state where it won't sustain life at all. I mean, when we can look at multiple species across the board of tree in many areas, not just Northern California, that cannot take the intensity of the UV, the contamination, and we're seeing whole forests die, whole ecosystems die. We're seeing the species extinction rate we're seeing. We're not going to be around that long if we don't deal with this issue. So, yes, the autism, the Alzheimer's, it's all important to try to reach these people, but the bigger issue is we have to stop these programs before Earth life support systems are damaged beyond any functional repair. And that's the bigger issue, but we should use every means we can. Russ, Elizabeth, if you have any more questions, or we'll maybe try to grab another caller.
No, I'm good. Thank you. And thank you all for what you're doing, all of you. I so appreciate it. Thank you again.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. It's great to hear from you again. Keep up the great work. You've done such great work in New Jersey. Thank you.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Caller with your phone number that ends in 89. You're live. Who are we speaking with?
My name is Greg. I'm from northeastern Pennsylvania. How you doing, guys?
Good, Greg. How are you?
Hey, Greg.
I'd like to thank you very much for what you've been doing all along as far as informing us all. I'm a 55-year-old retired law enforcement officer, and I do not trust the establishment as it is. This was the first year of my life that I've been awakened, enlightened to what's actually going on. And what actually did it was a History Channel show when they admitted how back in the 60s that the government was doing geoengineering, weather modification on the Ho Chi Minh Trail and trying to, flood them out so they couldn't get equipment, supplies, and everything else. And here it was being admitted back in the 60s. So everything that's happening now, we see the chemtrails in the sky in northeastern Pennsylvania. I'm in Pike County, Pennsylvania. it has been overcast and cloudy for months and months and months. It's like very rarely do you get to see a slight glimmer of blue, because it's not the blue that when I was a kid in my teenage years. I mean, it's scary. And what's scary, Dane, you've touched on it so many times about 1 out of 2 kids are going to have autism and everything else. What is the end game? Are they trying to annihilate the human race, the whole world? I mean, what's going on? Because as much as the grassroots, we try to do what we do, the people in power, and you've said it, it's global, they don't care. They don't care about us minions. They don't care about us peons, because from the beginning of time, you had the kings, you had the emperors, you had, what you have today globally. They don't care about us. So, I mean, they can silence us. They can do lots of things, but what do you think is going to happen? I mean, we do this, and it's great, and it's wonderful, but I don't think they don't care, and I think that, they can label us terrorists in America. They can pull the Patriot Act on us and knock our doors down and bring us in because, you're a terrorist. My God, you're talking the talk that you're talking. What do you guys think?
First of all, thank you. Go ahead, Greg. I want to thank you for waking up. I mean, a former peace officer waking up to hear that, that's very encouraging for me, because you're the kind of member of society that carries so much weight, and it's so important when people like you wake up. And my gratitude for your courage and being willing to do that. Greg, go ahead, then I'll finish up with something.
Yeah, what I was going to say, Greg, in regard to what their plan is, and Dane and I talked about this off air the other day, and I don't know that he's done a story on it yet, but he was going to do one. He was talking about doing one in relation to the Georgia Guidestones. And I would encourage you to research the Georgia Guidestones. I'm aware of them. Number one tenet. What's that? I'm aware of them, and they put 2014 in the top corner. Exactly. I don't know if you've been there physically, but that is a creepy spot to inhabit for a few hours. In addition to that, though, it's important that people remember, and this is what gains credibility with the issue, because if the fact that the global elite is trying to thin the herd, if you try to introduce this issue to somebody else, with that as the lead punch, you won't get far. It's way too much for people to try to get their arms around. And the fact is, there's other aspects to these programs, no question. The weather warfare, which was brought up a minute ago, Project Popeye, which is the project that was referred to in Vietnam. Right. And quite also, we have a methane cataclysm happening in the Arctic right now. And I hope other members of the anti-geoengineering community who think there's nothing wrong with the climate is horrifically damaged. It's far worse than any of the modeling has yet stated. And people have to get over Al Gore. None of this has anything to do with Al Gore, but the climate engineering has decimated the climate, as have a lot of other things. So the bottom line is we have a meeting in the UK that's happening that's to address the methane issue, and the top 80 scientists that are dealing with the methane issue were not invited. Why weren't they invited? Because the goal of this meeting, which involves people from NASA and NOAA, the goal is to hide the methane cataclysm, just like they tried to hide the Gulf oil spill. That's the goal. So we have an absolute planetary catastrophe unfolding right now. The methane is filling the atmosphere. We're seeing nighttime low temperatures, the rising twice as fast as daytime highs. It doesn't cool off at night because the methane is trapping the heat along with a lot of CO2. And CO2 is a problem. I hear so many people in our movement say CO2 is not a problem. Well, tell that to the ocean that's dying. The ocean is acidifying rapidly. CO2 is building up in the ocean. Just because something is good for you, and yes, we need CO2. Yes, it's good for the trees. It's good for the plants. But when there's too much and you start adding methane and you start having the kind of ozone destruction we're having because of the climate engineering, now you have a very lethal mix. So people need to look at the bigger picture, the more complex picture. And too many people are trying to put the climate engineering in this box or that box. It's a whole lot of things all at once. And the best way to introduce it to people that haven't heard of it, don't overwhelm them. Just simply tell them there's very destructive, very toxic climate engineering programs going on. The media is not telling us about it. They're trying to share the alarm, and let them go slowly into the rabbit hole and not throwing them off the edge into it, because they'll reject that. But
anyway, I'm very grateful to hear from you as a peace officer waking up. That's extremely encouraging. I hope you're able to wake up some of your peers, because you guys are the element of society we most need to convey the message, because people will trust you.
Well, it's funny, Dane, because, I mean, I got about almost 800 friends on Facebook. There are other retired law enforcement that we communicate. They're down in Virginia, North Carolina, Florida. We all kind of know what's going on, and we pull one another's coattails. But again, if the power elite, the power structure that's out there, I call them the puppet masters, because all politicians are puppets to the powers that be. If their end game is there, it's set in stone. And you know what's scary? It's like, if Hitler would have had the A-bomb, we know what would have happened to the world. I mean, if you get psychopaths in power, and there's studies out there that say, most of our politicians have an element of psychopaths in them, it's just scary that, we are trying to do it now, but maybe, the Rolling Stones going down the hill too far, and it is here, and we possibly could be facing the end of times.
Well, we're certainly...
And even if we are, it doesn't mean we should stop fighting.
So people should want to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. But even at this late date, we're in uncharted water. Nothing like this has ever happened on the planet with the elements we now have involved. But if we could stop the climate engineering, if we could expose it, it would expose everything with the power structure with it. And if we could make that abrupt a turn in direction with the ship, we don't know how profound the planet's life support systems are if they could just leave them alone. If we could just leave the planet alone and let it respond and stop the sort of destruction that's happening. And I don't just mean climate engineering. Stopping climate engineering is our first priority. But the paradigm that we have set up in society right now is extremely destructive and was never maintainable. And people need to face that fact as well. We can deal with that once we expose the climate engineering. But if humanity is fully awakened, and as this issue becomes impossible to hide, as the predicament we face becomes impossible to hide, people won't have a choice. They'll have to wake up. And we're at that point. So even though the horizon looks damn dark, if we could expose climate engineering and then the cascading effect of exposing a lot of other things and waking people up, I say we always have a chance. We always have a chance. And we don't know how much of a chance until we move that direction with every bit of strength we have. It's up to all of us. But again, with all of us pulling together, obviously progress is being made. So it's a battle that will take all of us. Thank you for sharing that with me, Greg, and I appreciate very much what you're doing.
I appreciate all the work you guys are doing, because, like I said, it's websites like yours that have educated me, and the exposure, it is there. If people want to get off their butts and stop watching, the boob tube, as I call it, and do something that's far more educational and enlightening, everything that, if they want to expose what's going on, it's on the internet right now as we speak. All the historical data, scientific data, pioneers of the field like yourselves. I mean, it's there. It's global. We know it is. And, taking the fight to the powers that be, that is the fight for the planet right now. It's not just a national, local, city, state. It's global. I mean, it's a fight for our lives.
Greg, let me ask you a quick question. I'm curious, because I was talking to a law officer in North Carolina yesterday, a furniture store, a young guy, and I asked him what percentage of the young guys that he worked with, were aware, but they were scared. Because he told me, the guys that I work with are scared to say anything. Are you in relation with any of the young police officers at this point? And what's your feeling as to how many of them know what's going on? And when the poo-poo does hit the fan, that they're going to be aware and they're going to be on the right side of history?
I would think, again, I'm 55 years old, so I come from a whole different generation. The people of today are so overwhelmed with trying to keep a roof over their head, food in their bellies, and clothes on their back, even those in law enforcement. Most people have to have a 4-year college degree. It's not like they take the GED guys any longer on the job. They are aware, and they are scared. They might talk about them amongst themselves, but to come out publicly, they could be labeled. I mean, my own wife, you guys hear how passionate I am. My own wife, I can't even convince of what the situation is, for crying out loud. I mean, I try pointing it out to her. It's there. But law enforcement, I believe, when it hits the fan, just like back in the days of the Civil War and Revolutionary War, people will rise up. But again, if the air we breathe is killing us, they've slaughtered us at that point in time.
Exactly. They don't need to take the guns necessarily. That's what I always say.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, the ammunition is the air we breathe, and they know it. Scary things like Ebola and some of the other diseases, viruses that they can put out there. If they're doing the chemtrails the way they are, anything could be put in the air. Well, what they just talked about in the middle of America, all these Midwestern states, the young kids having respiratory issues. Now, all these parents love their children on Facebook, and they post all these pictures, but they got their heads in the sand over like, well, why do you think they're getting sick? Look up in the sky. I mean, it is there, and people, I think they're scared. I mean, regular civilian citizens, they just don't know. They're scared to speak up. They don't want to think anything our government could never do that. Well, anybody who's been around the block a couple of times knows our government could do anything, because it has, and all governments of the world have done those things. I mean, I love history. That's why the History Channel is a big thing for me. If anybody looks back in time, anything is possible when it comes to people in power. And if it's old money, I mean, from the 13th, 14th century, families are out there still pulling their punches. It's scary, guys. It really is. But I believe that the Army, our military, people would do the right thing. But again, if you have nothing to fight, how do you fight the air? That's an enemy that I don't think anybody on this earth can beat. If they have the air, we're in trouble.
Given everything you described, Greg, you're 100% right. You're 100% right. It's very encouraging for me to hear somebody with your background that has such a clear assessment of everything. But given what we know, if people simply reach a place psychologically where they decide, they make a decision not to be afraid, that if you know you're going down with the ship, then what do you have to lose by joining the fight and making your voice heard? And perhaps with such courage from enough people, we may yet affect this equation for the better, no matter how dire it looks. So a person has to ask themselves that. What do I have to lose by cowering in the corner, just avoiding a little bit of resistance from people for another few weeks or months, and then perhaps facing my own mortality, knowing I didn't do a damn thing for the common good? Is that the way people want to go? I don't want to go that way. And in fact, I don't know what could happen for the better if we simply continue to face this, if we could stop geoengineering, the planet could start to respond, and people would start to wake up. Who knows what's still possible, even at this late hour. But cowering in the corner is not an option. It's not an option. And I hope people face the fact that they can make a difference if they simply tried.
Absolutely, Dane. And I would add to that I've heard people say, well, I'm afraid I'm going to be targeted. You're already targeted. You're already
You've been targeted for at least 50 or 60 or 70 years.
Yeah.
Hey, Greg, caller Greg, thank you for sharing what you shared. I'd like to hear from you more. You can email me at GeoWatch anytime. And again, everybody, don't cower in the corner. Stand up. Make your voice heard while you can. Time is not on our side. If we make every day count, we are getting closer to critical mass than we realize. But it's up to all of us to sound the alarm, every single one of us. There's a lot more awareness out there than we realize. But if everybody pushes right now, we can reach critical mass soon. So let's all make our voices heard.
Thank you, Dane. I appreciate it. Again, thank you for all the work you've done. I know you've been doing it for quite a number of years. And there's a lot of people out there that aren't speaking up, but they do read, and they're not dumb. So whatever they can do, we have to turn this around, because if not, there's going to be no planet left for life on this thing. It's going to turn out to be the moon or Mars or whatever, but we have to do something. We truly do. Thank you again, guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Thank you for calling in. Callers that we didn't get to, thank you for calling in. Please call in next week at ucy.tv. This is Geoengineering Watch Radio. You can see us every 12 noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time at ucy.tv. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Can't see